Story 1. I don't know if this is exactly the right place for this story, but I think it might be a decent fit. I apologize in advance if some of my vocabulary is a little off. I'm not used to talking about healthcare stuff in English. Hell, I'm not particularly used to talking about some of these things in my language either. A bit of backstory: I'm a guy in my 30s, and I'm disabled with a condition that has rendered me wheelchair-bound. To remedy this and get up on my feet again, I need physical therapy. However, due to COVID-19, things are a bit weird. Resources that would otherwise have been spent on those kinds of services were redirected to the general healthcare system, and young people therefore didn't have a place of their own to go. I ended up in a short-term rehabilitation home where I was the only young person among a bunch of old people. Initially, there were 2 wards, one for people suffering from dementia, not me, one for people who had physical disabilities, me, but after about a week, my wing was transformed into a COVID-19 ward, and the other was turned into a mixed ward housing people from both of those groups. As I think you can imagine, one of the things that are most noticeable about people suffering from dementia is their lack of memory. I saw how you could explain and explain and explain something to them, and they would only remember it for the shortest time. Not their fault, of course, but it could certainly get annoying when they would constantly rant about how someone had locked them up, despite them agreeing to their accommodations before promptly forgetting about their consent. It is very important to note that this is a common symptom of the disease and not something that ever actually happened. Being stuck for half a year in such a ward was certainly an experience, and I have a lot of stories about how I got mistaken for a member of the staff there. However, one sticks out to me, so here we go. There was this one old man who we can call Adam. He would constantly, maybe 4 or 5 times an hour, every day, for weeks on end, ask the staff how much longer he had to endure being locked up. They would say that he was to stay there for 2 weeks, or however much remained of those 2 weeks. I really didn't care, but since I was about 50 years younger than most of the other people who stayed there, I was constantly chatting with the staff instead and kind of learned his schedule through osmosis. After 10 days, I knew it perfectly. He was going home on Monday morning. On Friday evening, he popped by my room, clearly mistaking me for someone I was not. Adam. Hi there, you've worked here long. Me? Hi, Adam. No, I don't. Do you know when I'm going home? Well, yeah, but you should probably ask the how many days from now? I sigh. 3. So Sunday. Monday. It's Friday now, so Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. That's 4 days: Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Sure, if that's how you want to count it, 4 days. Can you promise me it's 4 days? No, you should ask the staff if you want to be. Or is it 3 days? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I go? You can count it that way as well, I guess. Can you promise me it's 3 days? No, I can't. I think you go home on Monday, but I can't be sure because I don't work here. You have to ask. So how many days do I have to stay locked up in here? I sigh again. This isn't going anywhere, and I've seen nurses get roped into hour-long discussions with this man. Discussions that really amount to absolutely nothing, and that he has forgotten the moment he turns away from them. I'm currently sitting in my wheelchair in my room, and he's standing at the door with his back turned to the hallway behind him. In that hallway, I see a nurse walk by. I see my chance. There, behind you, is a nurse that you can ask. He turns, with every bit of old man slowness he can muster. Before he's done, the nurse enters a door that's right next to my room to grab some cleaning supplies. She's quiet as a ninja cat, and is therefore gone when he has finally turned around. Me, sighing, I promise there was someone there just a second ago. He turns back to me. Very quickly this time, it seems. Can you promise me? The nurse exits the other room. Me. There she is. She can promise you anything. The nurse looks at me, then Adam, and then gently grabs him by the arm and leads him away from my room. As they walk away toward the TV in the common room, I can faintly hear them talk. So am I staying locked up for 3 or 4 days more? 3 days. Do you promise? Yeah. Or is it 4 days? I don't know if this is a funny story. It was funny at the time, and we all had a laugh. But writing it out now, I just feel different. A dementia ward is deeply tragic, in a way, and maybe this story exemplifies that more than anything else. You have to laugh at things to be able to cope with them at the time, though. You are more than welcome to laugh, but please laugh at my situation and not at Adam in that case. Story 2. Okay, this is a good one. Happened a few months back. So I work for a pharmacy software company. Specifically, I'm in the call center assisting pharmacies and hospitals who call in who use our software. Stick with me, a little context is needed before I get into the conversation with the douchebag. The way our call center is designed, recently new upper management took over and makes no sense, is that we now have a tier system with technicians. Techs rank from rangers, glorified receptionists, to level 4 programmers. I'm a level 3 tech, which means I'm a product specialist. This pharmacy had called in previously several times about a particular feature in the software. This feature was designed to make pharmacists and techs use the software in a specific way. If you deviated from this exact step-by-step process, then the system would not give you the end result you're looking for. And when I say step-by-step process, I'm literally talking about 2 clicks of a damn mouse. 2. Previous to a recent update, the software had a loophole in the coding and allowed the pharmacist to bypass the step-by-step process. Now, this loophole really had nothing to do with our software, but the overlay of how Windows 10 works. But our programming department was able to work out a fix and rolled it out with an update to our software. The fix works like this. If a person tried to use the loophole that was there, the software would send them back to the main menu and force them to start over. It would repeat this, forcing the user to finally do the step-by-step process. So they had updated to our latest version of the software and received this fix. Before they update the software, they were warned of the new change, but of course they didn't look at the terms and conditions. They called in and reached several techs, fishing for a different answer other than, "The system is not broken. You were warned of this change." They left absolute destruction in their path of rage, cussing out numerous techs, making personal threats, and of course the classic douchebag move, "I'm leaving your company." Because I'm a level 3 tech, I'm not live in the sense that customers can reach me directly. They have to be transferred to me by a supervisor. I'm scrolling through Twitter on my phone as my headset beeps. Supervisor, "Hey chef, we've got a fire we need that needs to be put out." Me, "Sure, what's the situation?" The supervisor explains the entire situation about how the customer is pissed and cussing out techs and won't accept the answer we gave him. Side note, I'm great at my job, and even help programmers with coding at times. I'm probably the most impatient and least empathetic person in my company. Why they choose me all the time to calm down irate people, I'll never know. Me? Well, they are going to love talking to me. Send them over. Supervisor transfers them over. "Hello, this is Chef. I'm the product specialist assigned to handle your case. Could you start by telling?" Jerk. "Listen here, Skippy. I've explained the problem 5 times already. Are you going to do your job and help me or not?" "Well, I was going to ask you your name. I'm aware of the situation. What is your name, sir?" He gives me his name. "Okay, thank you. My name is Chef, not Skippy, okay? So let me review the situation and explain to you from the coding side of things what's going on." I explained to him with a simple illustration that anybody could understand, even if you didn't know anything about computers, what the problem was and how we fixed it. But of course, that's not what he wants. That still doesn't fix my problem now, does it? Well, sir, there isn't a problem with the software. It's working as designed. Before you updated, it was explained to you that this change would occur. Yeah, sure it was. May I show you the security logs where you agreed to these terms? I sure would, so I can prove you wrong. I chuckle. Before an update can occur, the system only lets individuals who have admin access to the system authorize a system update. They must enter their user ID and password. Then they are presented with the terms, and they must scroll through the document to the end before they can install. I now have my screen shared with him on his computer. Me. See right here, your user ID was signed in and entered the password. Then you agreed to the terms. I didn't do that. I roll my eyes so hard they might get stuck. Why can't people admit when they're wrong? Well, if it wasn't you, then someone in your pharmacy has your user ID and password. Okay, whatever. So where do we go from here? This new change is taking up our time, and time equals money. Y'all are making us lose money. Sir, you have two options. 1. Don't use this particular feature of the software. Or 2. Just go through the process. It's only 2 clicks of the mouse. That's what I'm saying, it's taking up too much time. So you're saying that 2 clicks of the mouse is taking up too much time. At this point, he is triggered. While I was happy to light the fuse, earlier in the call, I looked up his account information. He's always late paying his fees, and always complains about things that none of our other 2450 pharmacies complain about. He's a small account, and to be honest, he's costing us money. Him leaving would not be the worst thing ever. Him. Look here, jerk. You better fix my problem, or I will personally mess your stuff up. I will end you. Okay, pause. I've only been cussed out a few times since I've worked for this company. A few times when I was lower tech. And to me, this is business. You don't use that language in business, and you for sure don't make threats. When a client starts cussing, I hang up. Sir, I will not tolerate that kind of language. I speak to you with respect. I expect the same from you. This is business. I also do not take threats against me or my family lightly. So as you know, this phone call is being recorded. I will make sure that proper legal actions are taken personally. Okay. Hang on, let me calm down. Okay, now this jerk gets it. Screw it, he's not only threatened me, but my fellow colleagues too. Screw this guy, I'm done. Me. Since personal threats were made, I'm no longer obligated to assist you. I will be taking legal action. But, I'm sorry. I hung up. Now I'm no prissy upper-class person. I've been threatened before and usually just let it go. But this guy rubbed me the wrong way. The thing I was most upset about is the fact that he did it to my other colleagues. So since this guy loves to make threats, I'm going to deliver on mine. I went down to our human resources department and explained the situation. The company, to my surprise, helped me file a joint lawsuit over harassment and death threats against me and my colleagues. Turns out that pharmacist was fired by his company and was hit with fines. He has a criminal history of domestic violence, abuse, and assault. I can only imagine the life his wife and kids have to go through. Right now the case is pending, and he might serve time because he violated his probation. Moral of the story: don't be a jerk. Story 3. This isn't about a specific incident, more of a general vent. Apparently, my particular style of resting, bother me face gives people the impression that I am just desperate to help them with retail tasks. I promise I am not exaggerating in this post. While I've never encountered the aggressive or over-the-top personalities I read about online, I often find myself wishing I could simply complete my errands without unnecessary conversations. And for some reason, this happens more and more as I get older. My husband didn't believe me at first. He thought I was making it up until we went to Home Depot together. At one point, he stepped away to browse, and from his spot, he watched as 4 different people approached me while I was obviously shopping. They all had questions. I was dressed in black athleisure wear and a ball cap with a fried egg embroidered on it. No orange apron. No denim uniform. That incident was last week. Then yesterday, at the grocery store, I got stopped twice. Once, someone asked if I could process their return. A little later, someone else wanted to see the manager. For context, I was standing in the frozen section wearing sweatpants, a hoodie, and my oldest Crocs. Both times, I gestured at my outfit and politely pointed out that I didn't work there. One person responded with, "Oh, you just looked like you were on the clock, so I asked." I cannot emphasize enough how much my appearance screamed not an employee at that moment. I could wear a royal blue tuxedo to Target, and someone would still ask me why I'm not working at the register. I could walk into a craft store in full Gothic attire and still be asked to check for a specific yarn in the back room. Once, while standing in line at a discount grocery store with a fully stocked cart, a customer behind me asked why I wasn't helping other staff members. To top it off, I was wearing the same egg hat at a bookstore one time, and someone commented, "I didn't know employees were allowed to wear hats like that," before asking if I could order a specific manga volume for them. I've tried wearing headphones as a deterrent, but that just led to people tapping me on the shoulder or arm to get my attention. That type of unexpected contact in a crowded store is particularly unsettling for me. It's not in my nature to be outright rude when someone is politely asking for directions or help with something simple, like finding the restroom. In those cases, I channel my upbringing as a polite Southern woman. I'll point them in the right direction and even offer a smile. These interactions are brief, and while they happen far too often, they're manageable. Sometimes, I even get compliments on my quirky egg hat, which is a bonus. However, the people who approach me rudely or invade my space with an entitled attitude, they get a very different experience. For those individuals, I might point them toward the wrong section of the store. If someone demands to know why I'm not helping them in a high-end butcher shop while wearing a Kansas t-shirt and pushing a personal shopping cart, I'll ask why they assumed I was working there. Sometimes, I'll take it a step further and sweetly inquire if they know what the store uniforms look like. Most of the time, they walk away without answering. I've toyed with the idea of offering candy as a reward if they guess correctly, but I haven't gone that far yet. The headphone strategy failing was especially disheartening because it felt like my last line of defense. I genuinely dislike being tapped on the shoulder, and the crowded environment of a place like Walmart only makes that worse. The constant interruptions are enough to wear anyone down. Despite the frustrations, I try to remind myself that not everyone has bad intentions. The polite people who realize their mistake and apologize often redeem themselves with humor or self-deprecation. In those moments, I can laugh it off and move on with my day. But the sheer frequency of these interactions is what gets to me. It's like there's something about my face or demeanor that screams, "Helpful employee," no matter what I wear or where I am. If there's anyone else out there who experiences this phenomenon of resting work face, just know that you're not alone. It's both baffling and exhausting, but at least we can laugh about the absurdity of it together. Whether it's the egg hat or the oldest hoodie in my closet, it seems that nothing can stop the inevitable questions. I guess I'll just keep pointing people toward the bathrooms and navigating these encounters as best I can. Thanks for letting me vent. If nothing else, it feels good to share the struggle with others who might understand. Story 4. I never expected my annual beach trip with my mom to turn into such a nightmare. We've been doing this mother-daughter beach day thing since I was little. It's our way of celebrating the end of my swim season. You see, I'm on my high school swim team, and this year we made it to nationals. Didn't win. But hey, qualifying was achievement enough for us to warrant our traditional celebration. We picked our usual spot at Pacific Beach. It's this quiet little stretch that tourists usually ignore in favor of the more popular spots. The weather was perfect, not too hot, with just enough breeze to keep us comfortable. Mom and I were lounging on our beach chairs, both in our basic black bikinis, just soaking in the sun and chatting about my college applications. That's when I noticed the massive tour bus pulling into the parking lot. At first, I didn't think much of it. Tourists come and go all the time, right? But something felt different about this group. They all stepped out looking like they'd raided a designer outlet mall and a vintage hair salon at the same time. Every single one of them had these enormous sun hats that looked more suited for a royal garden party than a beach day. Mom suggested we should start packing up soon since it was getting crowded. I begged for 5 more minutes, saying the sun felt amazing. Those were probably the last peaceful words we exchanged before chaos erupted. Without any warning, this huge group of tourists started charging toward us like we were some sort of tourist attraction. Before I could even process what was happening, they had completely surrounded us. The tourists were shouting excitedly about us being perfect beach girls and how exotic and natural we looked. They were speaking in broken English, waving their phones and cameras around like they'd just discovered a rare species. I tried to grab my towel to cover myself, but that only seemed to excite them more. I tried to excuse myself and leave, but they weren't listening. One woman actually grabbed my arm and tried to pull me into a pose with her. Another one grabbed my waist, attempting to steer me toward what I assume was her husband with a camera. It was like I wasn't even a person to them, just some prop for their vacation photos. My mom was yelling at them to let go of me while trying to push through the crowd to reach me, but they were equally fascinated by her. Some teenager in their group was literally jumping up and down, pointing at us and squealing like we were celebrities or something. The tourists kept insisting on taking more photos of us, calling us beautiful beach ladies. I tried telling them to stop and that we didn't want pictures taken, but it was useless. They either couldn't understand English or were choosing to ignore us completely. One particularly aggressive woman in designer sunglasses kept following me with her iPad, practically shoving it in my face as I tried to back away. My mom managed to break free first. I saw her making a run for our car, and I knew I had to do something drastic, so I did what any swimmer would do. I sprinted. Those years of swim training finally came in handy outside the pool. I dodged and weaved through the crowd, probably photobombing dozens of unwanted pictures in the process. When I finally reached our car, Mom was already inside with the engine running. I practically dove into the passenger seat, and we peeled out of there like we were in a getaway scene from a movie. Looking in the side mirror, I could see some of them actually trying to run after our car, still holding their cameras up. Mom checked if I was okay, and I told her I was just shaken up. When she asked what that was all about, I said I had no idea. She then firmly stated we were reporting this to beach security. And we did. Turns out we weren't the first ones to report similar incidents. The beach patrol actually had to start posting signs in multiple languages about asking for permission before taking photos of strangers. They also increased security around the tour bus drop-off areas. I still go to that beach with my mom, but now we bring beach umbrellas and cover-ups. Sometimes I catch myself scanning the parking lot for tour buses before settling down. It's crazy how one incident can change your whole perspective on something as simple as a beach day. The next time we saw a tour group heading our way, my mom was ready. She'd learned how to say, "No photos or I'll call the police" in 3 different languages. The look on their faces when she started speaking their language was priceless. They scattered so fast they left their designer sandals in the sand. Story 5. For context, I am a 22-year-old man, the oldest son of my mother, and I have 2 younger brothers aged 18 and 13. Each of us has a different father. While I mostly grew up living with my paternal grandparents, my brothers lived with our mother. This story revolves around my 18-year-old brother, whom I will call Jay for simplicity. Our relationship with our mother has been challenging at times, and it has become increasingly clear that she is far from perfect. During her relationship with Jay's father, my grandparents noticed that I strongly resisted returning to her house after visiting them. They explained to me later that they had to physically take me back to her because, at the time, I was legally required to live with her. One day, when I visited my grandparents, they noticed suspicious bruises on my body. Both my mother and Jay's father claimed that the marks came from playing too roughly with a dog. However, when my grandparents took me to a doctor for an examination, they were told that the injuries could only have been caused by physical abuse. As a result, I was taken to live permanently with my grandparents. At the time, I didn't understand any of this because I was so young, but it was explained to me much later when I was in high school. It all started to make sense, especially since, as a child, I would instinctively flinch whenever someone, such as my father, raised their hands for any reason. Despite learning about this, I decided not to hold a grudge against my mother, thinking she might have been a victim in some way herself until she later brought it up and insisted the bruises really were caused by the dog. Another difficult chapter in our lives was her struggle with alcoholism. While I do not want to delve too deeply into it since she has overcome it, and it was clearly a low point in her life, I think it is relevant to note because it led to frequent fights with our stepfather, the father of my youngest brother. Although I didn't live with them, I caught glimpses of these conflicts during visits. My brothers, on the other hand, had to live with that reality every day. Now, on to the event that this story is really about. It took place in April during the week of the solar eclipse. I was visiting for the week, and my mother had Jay drive her car to pick me up. Everything seemed fine for the first day or so, but then the incident happened. On the day in question, Jay and his girlfriend were both at work, and our mom was asleep since she worked night shifts. I was in the living room watching YouTube when she came out of her room, visibly upset. She mentioned being angry with Jay, then went back to sleep. Apparently, Jay had forgotten to refill the gas tank after picking me up, which annoyed her. At the time, I did not think much of it. It seemed like a small oversight, something she might scold him for, but nothing more. Later that day, when Jay got home, we went to his girlfriend's place to watch the eclipse. As we were getting settled, my mother called me and asked to speak to Jay. I handed him the phone, and even from across the driveway, I could hear her shouting. Jay, in his usual calm and patient manner, tried to explain that it was an honest mistake and apologized sincerely. However, she would not let it go and escalated things by threatening to take his car away, a car that she had recently given him and that he needed to get to work. This was not just unreasonable, but, as far as I know, probably not even legal. Her frustration stemmed from having to stop at the gas station before work, but she still made it on time. Despite this, she insisted that his oversight had somehow ruined her day. Jay, clearly fed up but still composed, told her firmly that he was done dealing with her and would be leaving. True to his word, when we returned home, he immediately began packing his belongings to move in with his girlfriend, where he still lives to this day. While Jay was packing, our mother asked to speak with him privately. I hoped, somewhat naively, that this would be her chance to acknowledge she had overreacted and offer an apology. Though I was not part of their conversation, it seemed clear from the aftermath that no such apology was made. At least she refrained from raising her voice this time. After Jay left, our mother entered the living room, visibly upset, and got on the phone with his girlfriend. She tried to convince her to let her speak to Jay, but his girlfriend refused. This refusal led to a tirade of insults directed at the young woman. My mother, a grown 40-year-old woman, called her a homewrecker and accused her of stealing Jay away. It was baffling and deeply embarrassing to witness such behavior. Fast forward to today, and Jay still refuses to speak with her, and I wholeheartedly support his decision. It takes courage to set boundaries like that, something I admittedly struggle with. For instance, I reluctantly attended Thanksgiving with her recently, purely to avoid confrontation. Beyond that, I have been distancing myself. I do not visit her unless absolutely necessary and only communicate when she initiates contact. Despite these steps, I know I am still giving her too much leniency for what she did. I hope that if something similar happens again, and I have no doubt it will, I will find the strength to establish firmer boundaries and possibly cut ties if needed. That about sums up my story. Thank you for listening. Story 6. My husband and I will drive her to the airport first thing in the morning. After that, we plan to go somewhere and spend the weekend together because this entire situation has been incredibly stressful. Honestly, I brought it upon myself. I had a small hope that things would be different once she arrived. At first, it seemed like they might. But then, everything took a sudden and dramatic turn. She was originally supposed to arrive on Monday, but her first flight was canceled. She was given the option to fly the next day or cancel the trip entirely with a full refund. In hindsight, that might have been a sign from a higher power. She told me about the cancellation, and although I wanted to tell her not to come, I stayed quiet and hoped she would back out on her own. Unfortunately, she arrived on Tuesday evening. It took her 20 minutes to figure out how to connect to the airport's Wi-Fi, making her the last person to come through the gate. We ended up missing the bus as a result. When I told her that the next tickets weren't available until 9:15 p.m., meaning a 3.5-hour wait, she immediately refused and insisted on taking a taxi instead. I offered a compromise. We could take a train halfway and then transfer to a bus. She rejected that too. In the end, I paid for a taxi to take us directly to my city, 2 hours away. That night, she insisted on sleeping in my bed, a demand I hadn't mentioned earlier. She also demanded that I remove my cats from the house. I refused. Day 1. I woke up early to head to the gym, but she asked me to stay home because she felt uncomfortable being alone with my husband. I waited until he left for work. My plan for the day was to take her to a traditional folk village in the afternoon, but she insisted on going in the morning. Once again, we had to take a taxi because she didn't want to ride the bus. All in all, it was a decent outing. She ate the local food without much complaint, which I considered a small win. Day 2. I scheduled an appointment for her to have her lips tinted and her eyebrows microbladed. The artist created a very natural look with soft, flattering colors. However, my mom hated it. She snapped, "Do you not know how to do eyebrows?" Luckily, the artist didn't understand her comment. My mom, on the other hand, has a fondness for unrealistic beauty filters from social media and wanted to emulate those exaggerated features. Think extremely arched eyebrows and overly plump lips. The artist and I tried to gently explain that the look she wanted might not suit her and that she could regret it. She wouldn't budge. In the end, the artist gave her exactly what she asked for. While the work was high quality, the final result didn't flatter her at all. The big blow-up. When we got home that evening, we watched a movie together. Afterward, I asked her what she wanted to eat. My husband and I were in the mood for soup, so he planned to pick it up from a restaurant on his way home. I showed her the 2 options, dumpling soup or hand-pulled dough soup. She claimed she didn't like the taste of Chinese dumplings, and I reminded her we were eating Korean food, not Chinese. Still, she refused, so I said we'd go with the dough soup. But again, she protested, saying she didn't know what it was. I explained that the dough was the same as the noodles she'd eaten the day before. Her response? "I don't eat that." I replied, "But you did, yesterday." She stubbornly insisted, "No, I don't eat that." "You can't make me eat it." I asked what she wanted instead, and she declared, "Rice and eggs." I offered to make it for her, but she insisted she'd handle it later. I thought the discussion was over. It wasn't. Minutes later, we were shouting at each other about dinner. She accused me of treating her badly and claimed that I'd been trying to ruin her trip from the moment she arrived. She said I was disrespectful, embarrassing her, and making her feel unwelcome. What was she mad about? She was upset that I didn't put my cats out of the house. I had compromised by keeping them out of her room and warned her they might still get on her things, explaining that this home belongs to my cats too. She found that offensive and disrespectful. She was angry that I wouldn't let her take photos or videos of me because I wasn't dressed nicely. I suggested she wait until the weekend, but she threw a fit and cried over it. She also cried when I asked her not to take pictures of my home, which she did anyway. When I confronted her about it, she accused me of being disrespectful. My opinion about her permanent makeup hurt her feelings. She believed the artist and I were intentionally mocking her taste. I repeatedly reminded her to avoid stomping or speaking loudly because of our neighbors. She took offense, claiming I was bossing her around and forcing her to adapt to things she wasn't accustomed to. When my husband came home, he skipped picking up dinner after I informed him of the argument. As soon as he walked through the door, she started crying. He checked on me first, and I gave him a brief explanation. Then he went to her, and she told a highly dramatic version of the events. He was confused and couldn't understand what I had done wrong. She immediately called my older brother to reschedule her flight. That conversation escalated into another shouting match, during which both of them made disparaging remarks about Korea and the people living here. When she realized I was translating, she told my brother to stop speaking like that. He ignored her and continued making offensive comments. Ultimately, she had to pay $800 to book an earlier flight for the next day. She could have changed her flight for free if she'd waited until Sunday, but she refused to stay that long. I'm not planning to ask her for reimbursement. I paid for everything she wanted during her stay, but I've decided to cut off contact moving forward. Edit. I forgot to mention we didn't make it to meet my in-laws. Also, when I said, out of nowhere, I didn't mean I was surprised by her personality. I just meant that after behaving decently for a while, she suddenly had an unprovoked meltdown.